Hello and welcome to Beyond the Game, a series brought to you by Nottingham Forest, proudly supported by Eon Next, that takes you beyond the final whistle and into the lives of some of the incredible women who sport the Garibaldi red. So join us as we go beyond the game. In today's episode, we are talking all things leadership, and who better to talk to than two women who are at the helm of two of Nottingham Forest's teams. I am delighted to be joined by the head coach of Nottingham Forest Women, Davies, and of course, head coach of Nottingham Forest Netball, Chelsea Pitman. Hi ladies, how are you doing?
Morning. Good. Very well, thank you.
Bright and early.
Yeah.
It's great to see you both. Now, I know that today's episode is all about leadership, but I thought it'd be really important to kind of just gauge where we both are at within your roles. Chelsea, for you, this is a role that is brand new this season with Nottingham Forest Netball. Just tell us how it's been going for you so far.
Yeah, so far so good. I definitely am loving the role and loving what I've been able to do. And sometimes I feel like a duck in water, so really calm on top, and my legs are just kicking wildly underneath. But yeah, I think the support I have around me, and also lent on Carly a little bit in that space on just making sure that I put my best foot forward and learn from the people that are around me, because it is so new for me.
Brilliant. And Carly, for you, we've just come to the end of your football season with Nottingham Forest Women, and it has been an incredible one. They won the cup, they won the whole league, promotion to the championship. You must be feeling on top of the world at the moment.
Yeah, it's been a great 10 months. It's been a great 20 months, to be honest, with the team and with the club. It was a lot of hard work and dedication and sacrifice across the 20 months that we've been, developing the project. But I think you've seen that over the last couple of weeks, and we got our just rewards for that, and what a season it's been. So yeah, we've certainly enjoyed it. Now we'll rest up, recuperate, and look forward to what's going to be an exciting season next year.
Brilliant. I'm really excited to see where it goes for both of you. Actually, when we talk about leadership, there's a whole journey that comes with the positions that you both hold now. And I really want to talk about that, actually, because both of you are originally players in the sports that you now coach within. Chelsea, let's start with you. Let's go right back to the beginning. Netball for you, where did it start? And what kind of brought you to where you are today?
Where did it start? I think for me, back when I started, netball was perceived as such a girly sport, and I didn't really want to play it because of that. I was a big tomboy and wanted to do everything my brother did. And then I just played it because I made a deal with a teacher that I could trial for every single sport if I played netball, and that's how my journey started. And then I fell in love with it. It was more about the people that were there and the girls that played it. And then I just was good at it. And because it was such a big, highly participated sport in Australia, I was like, I want to be the best at this sport because everyone plays it. And the journey I've been on with it, and the opportunities it's provided me, the travel I've been able to do, the people I've got to meet, has absolutely been amazing. So I wish it was Olympic sport, 100%. I had opportunities to play Olympic sports and take that further. But for me, it was about the love and the passion I have for the game. And that's evident in everything I do because I'm so passionate about it. Do I want it to be bigger and better? 100%. But that's just the slow journey and the journey we're on now.
It's really interesting that you say that, at the time, even in Australia, it was known as a girly sport back when you started too. Because if we look at the UK netball and we look at Australian netball, Australia, I think netball has grown significantly quicker to where it is now in the Suncorp Super League and things like that. But even then, when you were starting, was there still that stigma around it, even in Australia too?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was just seen as completely non-contact. It's very airy-fairy, very feminine, and it just wasn't the case. But I think sometimes people look at Saturday netball of kids playing it. It's going to be extremely different to when elite athletes, professionals play it, that sacrifice so much of their time to be best and physical and fierce. It's a different game when it's at the top level. So the stigma is changing. Sometimes you get people saying, oh, that's cute that you play netball, and you're like, is it cute? Come see the game. type thing. So it's still that unbiasedness towards it. But Australia, they're soaring with Suncorp Super Netball, and it's definitely growing and it's big. I think their average attendance at the moment is 8,000 for games, and you have like West Coast Fever who are getting 11,000 people who fill their arenas. We want that here, but we're probably 10 years behind where Australia's at with their netball. But again, we're putting the right steps in place for us to slowly get there, and it's not going to happen overnight.
I definitely want to come to that a little bit later on, actually, the difference that you've seen moving to the UK and playing here. But I kind of think, Carly, with you and your career within football, it's almost opposite end of the spectrum in terms of netball was looked at a really girly sport, something that you said airy-fairy. But for you, back when you would have started playing, it seemed like the game was only for men back then. Was that the case for when you were playing?
Yeah, I think so. Same as Chelsea, I was a tomboy playing out with the boys, jumper for goalposts sort of thing. And yeah, we didn't really have anybody to aspire to be like. There wasn't many female coaches in sport in general, let alone football, and same with playing as well. You didn't look up to those players. I loved male footballers, so the Gary Linekers of the world, the Paul Gascoignes, those were the players that sort of I looked at and obviously, you know, aspired to be like. Never really reached those levels, by the way, put that out there, but that's why I'm a coach. But yeah, we didn't have any role models, so we had to pave our own way, really. And, you know, I think I started playing in a boys' team. That's how a lot of women footballers of my generation had to play, because that was the only opportunities you had. And then I joined Villa when I think I was 15, so it was quite late for me, really. And that's sort of how I ended up on my football journey as such. And it was then over that sort of 10-year period that you really saw the women's game starting to take effect and take hold in the industry.
What did Villa look like? And, you know, when you were 15 and you were going in to play for a professional football club, back then as a young girl playing, what did that space look like then?
In all honesty, we were just a token gesture. Ultimately, it was we were very much amateur. We trained twice a week in the evening, played sort of like a grassroots level, I suppose, on the type of pitches that you would expect to see in the grassroots sort of game. So we didn't have a lot of support really from the club. We did train at the football stadium, because back then they had an indoor dome. It's been demolished now, but that's where we trained. So in terms of how close we actually got to the club, that was pretty much it, I think. But what I will say is, in the time that I was there, that changed quite drastically across sort of like it's a 10-year period, so it wasn't a quick turnaround, but it did change, and the club really took the women's team on board eventually. But it felt like a lifetime, to be honest, when you're in it. You're wanting to be successful and you're wanting to pave a career in the game, but it just wasn't happening quick enough. That's why I was coaching alongside playing, because it wasn't going to be a career for me. But coaching at the time it will pay the bills as well. So I think I missed out on that really. But what it did do is give me a foothold in coaching, which is why I'm sat here now.
Yeah. And, you know, Chelsea, you spoke about outside noise and the comments that you've heard, even still today, the comments that you hear that people say about netball. As a woman playing football and being within football, did you get a lot of outside noise, a lot of people with their opinions of what you were doing? And did it ever affect you in your roots where you are today?
I think you would get a lot of stigma around being a female in a male-dominated game. Even within the clubs that I worked in, some of the male members of staff that we worked with didn't see the value in us being there. And you know, I grew up around that environment, and you get quite thick-skinned to it. And I'm actually thankful for those experiences, because it's really set me up to be in this industry. A lot has changed since then, of course, but you still have to have thick skin, and you still have to, you know, try and break the boundaries and raise the ceiling and raise the bar, being a woman in a male-dominated industry. But yeah, I mean, I was pretty thick-skinned then, and I am now. But it's important that we do still like push back against that sort of noise.
Yeah, absolutely. And also what's really nice to see is that you guys are now leading teams that have got a mixture of men and women that you are working alongside with. And it seems that you've both got really healthy groups of people that you're working with to be as successful as you are with both of your respective teams, which is obviously major growth considering what you've just said. Chelsea, let's get into then the journey of you actually becoming a head coach, because it really wasn't that long ago that we were seeing you on the court in the Netball Super League in the UK actually. And of course you were playing out in Australia too. Was it a difficult decision, first of all, to hang up your dress initially, and what made you think that coaching would be the next step for you?
It definitely was a difficult one because I loved playing. I loved every part of what it was to be an athlete, all the pain, the sacrifice and stuff that fueled me to be my best, and that's what got me up out of bed. And I think towards the end of my career last year, that weighed a bit more on me. So I was like, okay, probably time to start thinking about what's next. And that made the decision for me. Like, I was still in good form, I was still playing well, but the small things just became a little bit harder. And so I retired thinking I was like going to have a bit of time off and go like travel Asia and be on the beach for quite a period of time. That didn't happen, which I'm so thankful for. I just look back and it makes me chuckle, me sitting here today talking about this, because it literally was a complete U-turn and a different direction of where my life is now. And I've spoken about it before. I'm so thankful for this opportunity. Was I scared to say yes to it? Absolutely. It was such a big change, and it happened really quickly, and it almost felt overnight. But I'm someone who, if something scares you and also makes you excited, it's probably the right decision to say yes to. And that was exactly what I did and why I said yes to this. Probably some things I didn't quite think how big the job was, being a startup. Yes, we are attached to Nottingham Forest Football, but the actual netball side of it, I think there was 3 staff, as in within the netball department when I came on board, and it was like, okay, so now put a team together. I was like, right, okay, let's do it. But I think, again, I absolutely love opportunities. I love growth, and I like to be challenged. So that's every day in this role. So going from an athlete to a coach it's been a smooth transition in some bits, but it definitely hasn't been easy, but it's been wonderful. Good. So far.
And for both of you, when you were playing, was there, when you had coaches back in the time, did they ever point out attributes that you now find are really useful in your coaching roles? Were you ever the bossy one on court, or were you ever the one that was demanding others from other? Yeah, what was it like that you kind of noticed and thought actually coaching would be kind of quite natural to me?
I think it's funny because I feel like we were probably the same player but in 2 separate disciplines. But I was a terrible loser, like such a sore loser. Always bossing everybody around on the pitch, like butting heads with managers all the time, because I had such high levels and high demands of like myself and everybody else around me. And I think back to one manager that I have, we're actually still in contact. We're quite good friends now, and lean on him a little bit if I need some advice. But one time he was in my face and he was screaming at half time, and I was sat there and I was so angry. And I think, like most players, he would have hauled straight off the pitch, but we just had that sort of understanding of one another, and probably wasn't the best attribute I had as a player. But I think what it does do is it creates thick skin, and it sets you up for, I guess, being a coach, because you do have to be demanding and you do have to have standards to certainly be successful. Obviously, you learn and you evolve, and there's ways to do things and speak to people. But I think if you're not innately a winner, I'm not really sure, the professional game in whatever discipline you're in is necessarily for you, because you have to want to win games and you have to want to be successful. And I think that's intrinsically driven in a person. Whilst you learn and you develop to be a better coach and a better leader, I think ultimately you have to want to win.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. And yes, I was definitely a bossy. Yeah. When I stepped into this role, I was like, I think I owe some coaches an apology. Yeah. Just for certain things.
For sure.
But yeah, and like competitive. My friends make a joke that I'm so competitive with everything that I even take eating as a competition to finish it so quick. So it's been me since I was a kid.
But that's really funny, because now that you guys are here, you can kind of step back, can't you, and look back and see those traits in yourself as a player. Do you see those traits now in some of the women that you're coaching, and does it almost make you giggle? I'm sure in sport there's always going to be a few clashes and a few butting of heads, but does it almost make you smile a little bit, thinking, oh, I'm actually, I'm coaching a team that have got a lot of leaders within it too?
Yeah, I think think so, definitely. And you don't want the same play for everything. You want an environment where everyone's challenged, and I want to be checked and challenged, because how else am I going to learn? And I was definitely that athlete. And winners they're gritty, and they question you, and they ask the whys, and they want to be better. And as long as it's coming from a good place, and then you can have build that relationship to be able to get through to them, to be like, okay, I understand this, but it's team first, or putting that aside and making sure that, yes, everyone's different, but you're heading towards the same goal. I think it's about a respect piece. But you definitely want someone, I think, it might have been Amber that said this to me when I first came here. She's like, you always want one person to be throwing sweets at the back of your head to keep you on your toes. And so I was like, that's very true. So, yeah, I definitely can think of a few players.
We won't get you to name any
similar
names.
to me. But they're wonderful. They're great. They're the winners. They're the ones you need when it comes to crunch time, or when people are tired. And it's like, no, we're getting this done. We're here to work. Let's go.
What kind of was really key for you to kind of transfer those skills, obviously, of being a player that had all these attributes that we've just spoken about, but then honing it in to be a coach? Because I guess there is, we said the word bossy quite a few times now, and we've said, you kind of get that go out there and get it attitude. But what was really important then for you guys to kind of hone it in, especially for you, Chelsea, transitioning from being a player amongst a lot of the girls that we now see playing in the Super League now? You played alongside Freya at Pulse a year or so ago. What was really key for you to kind of hone that in to become, you are the head coach, you are the top of the chain in that sense?
I think the hardest thing, or the challenging thing for me, was, as an athlete, you can be a barometer for intensity, and if things aren't going well, you just like up it, and then you question your teammates like, what's going on? And that's the easier part of being an athlete, and that's what I really enjoyed. But as a head coach, you've just got to sort of lay it out and say, these are my expectations, and this isn't good enough if you need. But in the end, you have no control over really being able to get the best out of them, because some days they're going to have those days, and that's probably the hardest part that I've found. But again, I think for me, my coaching, philosophy, talking a little bit about it, is I'm people first, athlete second. I want them to be challenged. I want to be challenged. It's the growth mindset, and looking at the holistic view of our culture, the environment, and also them as athletes, and what makes them tick away from the court. And that's really important to me. And I don't know everything. I'm still learning, and I'm still always second guessing myself sometimes, and making sure I look at everything, and my brain is never switching off. But that's me, and I'm sure Carly has a very different look on that. But for me, that's how it is at the moment. And yeah.
Yeah, what about you, Carly? Transitioning from those traits as a player to becoming the head coach that you are now, was there like a switch that made you realise, this is my style, this is how I'm going to use my skills?
I actually, when I think back, if I'd have been in the same situation as Chelsea, where I went straight out of playing, obviously I didn't play at the level that you played at, so coaching was my job. It was what I did full time. Obviously not at the level that I'm doing it now, but I think if I'd have gone straight from a professional football career into management, I don't think I'd be who I am now as a manager. I think actually I learned a lot in all the different environments that I worked across probably a 12-year period, and I worked with some really good coaches. I worked with some really, really bad coaches who didn't treat people well, who didn't foster a good culture. And it's actually the worst experiences that taught me the most about myself and what type of leader I wanted to be. And I wrestled backwards and forwards with wanting to be a head coach because of those reasons. There's a lot of pressure that comes with it. But when I left Villa, I went and did a diploma in football management with the LMA, and it come at a really good time for me. I did a lot of reflecting on my experiences, people that I worked with, people that I enjoyed working with, people that suppressed my personality, I suppose, or didn't make me feel like it was an environment where I could really bring the best of myself. And it's when I come out of that I was like, right, I'm ready for this now. I knew what type of leader I wanted to be. I knew what environment I wanted to create, what culture I wanted to create. And that's when I took the step, and I interviewed for multiple different managers' roles, and that's how I ended up here at Nottingham Forest. And our values aligned. People first. That's the one thing that I do know about myself. I love working in a team. I think we wouldn't be in these jobs if we didn't. You have to want to work with people. And I think that was the difference, I think, probably between our journeys, is I had a lot of experience of coaching and management, even though I wasn't the manager before I took the role. And And I feel like that placed me in a really good position to be able to be successful like I am today. However, there's still a long way to go and a lot to learn and a lot more pressure that's going to be coming. And then it's how we deal with that pressure when it's on top of us, I suppose.
Be a duck.
Yeah, be a duck, yeah.
The next thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about, and I'm really interested because with both of your different scenarios within your sports, I think we'll get two really good answers from this. When you kind of set out on your journey within your sport, when you were younger, did you see longevity within working within football and within playing and working within netball? Or for you guys back then, was it always to have a backup? You know, there's a lot of people now, older generations than us, that probably missed out on careers within sport because they didn't think it was going to be something that could be long lasting and sustainable. But where do you guys sit with that?
It's funny actually you asked that question because I was having a conversation with Amber yesterday around it, and I remember being in primary school, and you know, you always had that one lesson where it was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you're like sitting there, you're like, I'm 7 years old, like I don't know. But at 7 years old, I was like, I want to be a footballer. Like, I didn't know coaching was something you could do, but football was visible, and that's what I wanted to do. And naturally, you get there. I mean, that's not really realistic. So what do you really want to do? And I still didn't. Yeah, and I still didn't know it. Who knows at 7 years old? Nobody knew at 17 years old, let alone 7. But I think you know, maybe we didn't see that there was a path there. But I think certainly you go through your teenage years and you're just surviving, aren't you? You don't know what's coming next for you. And I think that's just what happened with me. I fell into playing for Villa, and then I fell into coaching, and before I knew it, I was super passionate about it, and just kept getting opportunities because that's what I wanted to do. And I think that's how I ended up, you know, in the situation that I'm in today. But yeah, so I think 7-year-old me was just sat there thinking, no, I'm just going to play football. And then here we are, 25 years later. I don't know how old I am, maybe 25 years later, I don't know.
We'll do the maths later.
That's definitely not going to be right. Let me tell you, I'm terrible with maths as well, so here we are. But yeah, I think sometimes you just fall into things, but certainly for me, I was never going to let somebody tell me that I couldn't do something. So yeah, I proved them wrong.
Absolutely. And Chelsea, I'd love to get your insight on it as well, because earlier you kind of said that in the UK with netball, we are still so far behind where we see netball in Australia, which is where you kind of first got into this sport and grew up. And you're in a head coach role in the NSL 2.0 here, doing a brilliant job of that. But was that a career that you saw yourself doing after playing?
It was something I was definitely interested in. I just didn't think I would do it so soon. As a netballer, you definitely have to have a second job, have to have something as a backup, just because we're not there yet in terms of pay. And I'm pretty blessed, like I'm a full-time head coach, and I never was necessarily a full-time netballer. I always had to have something secondary to be able to top that up. So I'm really in a blessed position right now. But for me, I always knew I wanted to coach. I loved coaching. I was an extremely inquisitive athlete. I was a nosy athlete. I wanted to know every aspect of the netball court and not just my unit work. And also I wanted to know what are you guys getting up to in terms of coaching and how they analyse things. So I think that gave me confidence to step into this role. But yeah, so one day I want to do this. And then I was given the opportunity. And again, I think I touched on it. It scared me. And I was like, that's the one you say yes to.
What was your second job?
I was a police officer for a period of time over COVID, and I always wanted to do services. I knew I wanted to be either a nurse, a cop, or a fiery. And policing, I loved it. I really loved it. It was a hard job. It was tough, but the adrenaline side of it, and also just helping people. I love talking, and sometimes my feedback from my sergeant was like, can you just get the job done and stop talking? Yes, boss. Sure thing. I was like, but they want to talk to me. But I understood it after a 12-hour shift that wrap it up, Proby. Let's go.
But that's interesting though, because I think from both sides of you still have players that are playing underneath you that are balancing, some professional sport and working part-time, full-time jobs on the side. Do you think within the netball space that we are on the way to a place where a lot of our players can start to go fully professional and call netball their main and one and only job?
I think we're a long way off it.
Yeah.
Our base wage is £10,000 and you have to have 3 players on that due to the salary cap and the way the banding works. And so that is not something you can live off. Contracts are only 10 months long. There's no security in that. And usually majority of places only give 1-year contracts. So that's the base I'm talking about. But you have to work, or you need to have a really supportive family, or you need to be in an environment where you have no expenses paid, expenses that you need to pay. So yes, it's way better than what it has been. And I understand that NSL 2.0, they're making changes, but it's a long way off. We want to have girls that are on minimal, how long's a piece of string? I'd love the minimum to be 100K, but being realistic, we need to get to at least the minimum being 35. When is that going to happen? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. What I can do is promote netball and try and get people to invest in it, talk positively about it, and want to get the girls to be household names. They're like, oh my gosh, did you see the Forest game? But did you see Rhea Dixon and how amazing she is? I'm her biggest fan. And little things like that, and that change will hopefully, in the end, slowly make people want to invest in us, like in our mini companies, because that's what it comes down to, is money. I hope to be part of that change, and I'll do everything possible to help do that, and one day say, yeah, full-time netballers. But also it keeps you grounded, keeps you humble. And it's just me finding that balance of the girls have other lives, and this might not be their main source of income. So sometimes their brain, when things aren't going well for them, or they're not getting played, or the form's down, that they might struggle a little bit because, like, well, they just get that negative sense on, well, my other job pays me more. I haven't had that yet, but I'm definitely conscious that those things can happen.
And similarly, Carly, with football, I mean, Nottingham Forest last year became a hybrid model in terms of professionalism. And for you, coaching for so long, you must have seen the game evolve, the women's game evolve in that sense. How much did that improve the quality of the game for the girls this season?
Yeah, it was an interesting dynamic to manage, if I'm honest, because we had, I think it was 6 full-time players and the rest were part-time, all on contracts. So they were all earning a little bit, but alongside working as well. And obviously we also have people with families, and that's a lot to juggle too. So one of the questions I was constantly asked was, how do you manage that dynamic with the players when they're like, these are the full-time players and we're part-time, so that means they're going to play and we're not going to play. And it was something that I had to really think about and consider, because I've not been in that situation before. It was either everyone was part-time or everybody was full-time. So it was certainly a shift in dynamic and something that I had to consider. And you have to treat people differently. You can't treat them all the same. And that can be difficult when you're full-time yourself and you're kind of seeing the vision and the end goal and you want to get everybody there. But you have to get them there in their own way and at their own pace, and still aligned to what you're going after, but also understanding that, you know, she's going to be tired because she's just come off a 12-hour shift, or she's all right because she's she's been in the building an hour and this is the first thing she's doing today. So it was definitely a challenge in that respect, but what we did have was great people, and it comes back to what we spoke about earlier, is the culture that you foster and the environment that you foster. And I think when the players are understanding of each other's situations, it makes your job a lot easier, and that was certainly the case for ourselves. And then fortunately for us, the ownership decided that no, we're going to have a real go at this year. And first day of pre-season, I was pulled into a meeting and they were like, this is happening, and I was like, brilliant. So away we went, and again we had brilliant people in the building, and it's been a wonderful year for us, and obviously it paid dividends because we're now going to be playing in the championship. So
fantastic. And I think for you guys, I'd be interested to know your opinion, because I guess it could almost be quite frustrating. Common sense would be, if you're doing something full time and you have the whole day, you have someone, you know, you're looking at your nutrition, you're getting the right amount of sleep, would mean that you are then performing better on court and on the pitch. And obviously this isn't full-time, sport isn't accessible for all women, it isn't accessible for everybody. Is there a little bit of frustration when you look at the women's game versus the men's game, Carly specifically within football, Chelsea from you looking at other different sports, male-dominated sports as well, that you can't really tap into the max potential that you know that your players have got? Is there a frustration there with that? Or have you kind of just accepted that this is the way that this is and we're on our way to getting there?
I think obviously in our situation at the moment we are full-time, so we do have access to pretty much everything that we need. Do we get the same level of access as some of the senior pro males do? No, but that's where we're at the moment. We're very fortunate here. We are very well supported by the club, but that's not the case in all scenarios, in all situations. I think, sleep, food, they're the biggest sources of recovery. And I'm sure certainly in Chelsea's situation, when players are coming to training and they've maybe been at work all day, naturally that's going to take its toll on you. Mentally you're tired, physically you're tired, but then we're expecting them to produce the same outputs as every other player that maybe is in a full-time situation. So it's definitely a challenge, and it can be frustrating that I sit here and I'm listening to Chelsea and it's frustrating me that they're where the women's game was probably 10, 15 years ago, and I don't understand it. I don't understand how we're in 2025 and we're still sitting here trying to demand that, women get the same support that male athletes get. But it's something that we have to keep talking about, and it's something that we have to keep pushing, so.
What about you, Chelsea?
Yeah, and I think talking about it helps. It's frustrating, definitely, because I think our sport's amazing. I don't think it's girly. I think I want people to come to a game to watch it and then they can have their opinion on it. But I don't know what else I can do to help it get there quicker. And that's probably been the hard thing, sitting back and going, well, what else can I do? And trying to speak to those that have the strategic plans and trying to push it more professional. Again, they're questions that we always ask, like, why are we not there? And all we can go off is looking at the Southern Hemisphere, Australia. They're doing really well. Their contracts are better, they're more full-time, their coverage is amazing. So what can we do to not copy them, but they've already paved the way for our sport to grow? How can we learn from them without making mistakes and just sort of going in our own on our own trajectory, or our own path? So I just think we need to tap into that and not ask for help, but ask, like, what do you think we can make changes now for us to grow like you guys did over there? And I think that they're having those conversations. I know I have conversations with people over there coaching-wise to be like, hey, so want to give me some insight or advice on this? But again, I just want our sport to be seen. I want it to grow. I want our players to be paid well. Is it going to happen overnight? No, it's probably 10, 15 years away. And I don't know where I am, but the beauty, or where I will be, but the beauty of being attached to Nottingham Forest, they haven't just this isn't a tokenistic thing. So the girls have nutritionists, we have everything available to us, in not as much as the men do or anything, but they allow us to tap into that. So I think for where we are at as a club in NSL 2.0, we are absolutely smashing it. And I love that. But again, it's also just it is the way it is, and this is where we're at. So we just need to make the best of where we're at.
I think what I would say on that, though, is when we say we're maybe 10, 15 years away, why are we?
Yeah.
Why is it? Why should it take the same amount of time that it took for women's football to get where it is? Because we've come such a long way since then. Women are paving the ways in business. They're doing it in sport, in all of the different disciplines and industries. And all it needs is visibility. It needs visibility, and it needs somebody to go, no, there's real value in this. There's value in investing in these women. There's value in investing in this industry, this business. And if we can just push that, 100%. And we need, like we're doing today, we're talking about it. It just takes one person to go, no, I'm going to take hold of this, and we're really going to run with it. And why should it take 10 years? Why can't it not take 2 years? Why can we not be doing what the Australian League are doing in 2 years' time? And that's the frustration for me. It's like, we shouldn't look back and go, oh, that's how long that's going to take.
True.
What do you put that down to? Because there's so many different elements to why we can say that women's sport isn't equal or isn't anywhere where it should be. Would you put that down to the way that society views women's sports, or would you put that down to old-fashioned ways organisations are run and how women are respected within big organisations and leadership roles. Can you pinpoint it at all, or do you think it is just a massive problem when it comes to the attitude towards women doing well within a sport, no matter what the role is within it?
I think we have to be careful that we don't pigeonhole it to one thing. I think, listen, it's still a business, and people aren't going to invest their money in something that they don't think they're going to get a return in. That being said, name me a sport that turns over a revenue, particularly football. There's not many teams that do. I think visibility is massive. I'll be really honest, I hadn't seen a lot of netball until Chelsea and the team come on board with the club, and seeing what the club are doing now and supporting the netball team. It's exciting, it's wonderful. And I sit here and I think, well, I didn't know about that 12 months ago, and I'm a woman in the industry. So not your industry, but in sport. So it just comes down to visibility for me. And the more we can get it out there and the more that we can drive this, I think you will get investors and you will get people that see the value in it, but we have to talk about it and people have to want to do the work. But on that, what I will say is there are many businesses and there are many people, male and female, that do see the value in women in sport. So I think I don't want to sit here today and just say, all men don't support women, because I don't think that's true, and I think that would be unfair. But there's certainly still a lot of barriers that we need to break down.
Yeah, and you say that there's also women that don't support women within sport too. It's across the whole board, and it's just trying to get as many people to come and watch. You always say, Chelsea, just come and get down to a game and you'll see exactly what we're all talking about, and that's all it takes. But it just feels like a hard task, doesn't it, sometimes? And for you guys to be at the top of it, I bet it's quite frustrating to see. I want to talk around disparities within the head coach role specifically. I feel like we've spoken a lot about the teams that you coach in a wider view. How important do you think it is for female players to have female coaches within their sport? Do you think that is a necessity? Do you think that that's vital in their game?
I think it's a little bit different for netball because majority of the head coaches are women, bar a few. But I still think it's extremely important. I think for the younger generation, if you don't see it, you can't be it. And so it's about inspiring and seeing someone and going, oh, wow, you can do that. And it's like the 7-year-old being able to see someone on the telly and be like, oh, look at for you in your little box where you stand there, there's someone, one 7-year-old might be like, I like what she does, I want to be Girly. And just those things I think are so important. And also just because I think women in these positions, we know how to do it. We can do it, and we are leaders, we're confident, and I think you're the same, we like a challenge. And so for netball, again, there's majority are women, but in the other disciplines that surround us, it is very male dominated. But that's, I think, because my sport is very feminine. It's females. The men's game is getting there and it's growing, and that's really exciting for us. We want them to be able to come on the journey with us without professionalising. But they're not there yet either. So I think it's very different for you. I think I saw a stat once, was it 22% there's only 22% of women managers in the women's league, something like that. Across the league. And when I saw that, I was like, huh?
Is that what?
I think that was maybe worldwide in the
Yeah, only 22%. I mean,
yeah.
Don't hold us to
Something
that.
something like that. I remember reading it.
No, it come out recently, across the professional women's game. No, it is. It's quite small, and if you look at the Women's Super League and the Women's Championship, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's still predominantly dominated by males. There are a lot of really talented female coaches working in the top 2 leagues, not all in management roles, and some in assistant coaches roles as well. But it's certainly an issue, I think, and one that we have to talk about. There are many, many female coaches that have the qualifications and the leadership skills to take on these jobs. I think one of the issues that we have at the minute is in the growth of the women's game. Financially, it's becoming more viable and appealing to people. And what we're seeing now is a lot of male coaches moving across into the women's game. What I will say on that, though, is there are a lot of male coaches that are in the women's game that have been in the women's game before it was financially viable for them. So for me, I'm not going to sit here and say all women should be coaching in women's teams, and there shouldn't be no men, because I don't agree with that statement, and I don't think it's the case. But I think what is frustrating at the minute is we're seeing a lot of top clubs now looking at stats. So they appoint managers based on stats. Now, if only 22% of coaches in the women's professional game are female, the majority of the stats are going to pull out males. So therefore, males are getting the jobs. And I just think that clubs are overseeing really good female coaches, particularly English female coaches. If you look in the WSL, a lot of the coaches that are in there, even some of the females, are foreign. So that's an issue as well. We're not only talking about women, but we're talking about British women who have invested a lot of time and effort into the game to upskill themselves, but are not being given the opportunities that they've rightly deserved or earned. So it's something that we need to look at. I think the Football Association have to look at it, and I know that they are. But what I would hate to see is that we end up looking at the top two leagues in 2-3 years' time, and that it's predominantly dominated by males. So I think that would be a real shame for the game.
And why do you think it is really important to have, not even just in head coach roles, anyone that sits off the pitch or off court that's part of a support system for a group of athletes? Why is it important that there is women there when it comes specifically to their game? Because when we talk about women, there's so many other things that you don't think about when it comes to sport. For example, big news with FIFA making investigation periods and injuries, and that's something that, I'm sorry, but men would never understand what it feels to have a period. And it's just like little elements like that people, I don't think about, is the benefit of having representation of women off the pitch there to support. Is there anything that you can think of that's really important for you to be a woman coaching female players?
Understanding.
Yeah.
A woman understands a woman.
Yeah.
You know, like, we are innately different, male and female. So, listen, there are some wonderful, wonderful males that work in this industry and work in sporting industries with females who are very understanding, who go and educate themselves on the differences, on understanding menstrual cycles and what that does to your body and what it means to you from an injury perspective. But then there are some people that are very ignorant to it and don't want to look at the differences. I've worked with some coaches that have come across from the men's game into the women's who will say there is no difference, it's football. And then you speak to them 3 months later and they feel very differently about it. Women want to know why. Chelsea said when she was playing, I want to know why, I'm inquisitive. Or why do you want us to do that? What in the men's game, that might look a little bit different. I don't know, because I've not worked in it. But I think you have to understand the differences. And if you're going to be ignorant to that, you're not going to last long.
What are your thoughts then on the men's game creating spaces for more women also to work within similar roles to what you're doing on the bench and things like that? Because, you know, there is that element that you've just spoken about of women understand women, we are different. But also when it comes to the game is the game, isn't it? And you guys have just as much knowledge and technical ability when it comes to it. Do you think there should be more opportunities across the board for women when it comes to men in the men's and the women's game?
I think if you look at the male game and how many women are in it, they're often in medical roles or, you know, physiotherapists. I don't think there are many, and don't quote me because I don't really know. I don't think there are many women that are working in the men's professional game in a coaching role. I know Emma Hayes come out and spoke about it before she took the US national job. She had a few opportunities to go into the men's game, but chose not to. And why would she? She's created a brand for herself, and she's done an unbelievable job in the women's game, and probably rightly took the job that she'd earned and deserved. But I think we're a long, long way off of that. There's still a lot of narrative to change, I think. You know, we're sitting here going, men, you know, need to understand the differences in the women's game. And if I was a male in the men's game, I'd be going, well, if we're going to employ women, they need to understand the differences in the men's game. And you are right, when it comes down to the tactical element, it's the same, but physically it's very different. Mentally it's very different. Resilience looks a little bit different. So I think there should be spaces for women in the men's game, but I think we have to affect a lot of change before I think we'll see a lot of that. I think we're still a long, long way off it.
Mm-hmm. Chelsea, earlier on you mentioned the phrase paving the way, and I think it's safe to say that both of you guys are paving the way in your respective roles in your sports. But what I wanted to know is, when you are within this role, do you ever feel like you have to further prove yourself to feel like this is where you belong? Have you ever felt like that's the case? The term imposter syndrome, does that ever catch you guys out every now and then? I think it does everyone.
Yeah, it's a funny one, because it's definitely something that I've openly spoken to you about, that I'm working with that or struggling with that, just because I was an athlete and I was good. I was a good athlete, and I knew that, and I was so confident in that space, and I didn't have imposter syndrome there. Sometimes it creates, though, an ego. That's Chelsea Pitman, the netballer, and sometimes you forget about what else you bring to the table. And then stepping into this role was like, oh, okay, very different. And you just have that little bit of insecurity around, should I be doing this? Am I doing this? Am I good enough? What if I fail? What if I fail the team? Like, they've come over because I've recruited them, and all these other stresses that you just think a lot goes on inside your head, and you do have that imposter syndrome. But again, I think the beauty of my career and how much I moved around, and it wasn't smooth sailing. Like, I had to be a very resilient athlete and have a lot of self-belief, that at least I know that it's just the way I'm feeling, because I want to be perfect, almost like I want to be great. And it's not a negative thing, even though I think for whatever reason women do suffer from it a little bit more, and especially when you do hold positions that are seen as power, or like leadership roles or male dominated roles, that we just have that weight, and it's because of the historical way of women are viewed in positions of power. So I think it comes from a young age that it gets put on you, and it's hard to break it, but I'm doing my best, and I even feel awkward talking about it a little bit. So I think you just need to have a good support system and have a very acute awareness of who you are as a person, and people around you that will help you talk it through and slap some sense into you, maybe, if you allow it to give it too much head noise. Please don't physically slap me. But yeah, so I think, it's something that I'm going through at the moment, because I'm in a very different big transition in my life.
Yeah. And Carly, for you as well, we've just discussed the fact that you and your role, females in the role that you hold within like the top two leagues, is a minority figure, which is crazy. Do you ever feel like you have more to prove, that you deserve to be where you are?
Yeah, I think as Chelsea was just talking then, and I was reflecting on the question, and I was thinking, I've always struggled with that as well in coaching and in management. And I actually shared a story with the girls on the last day of the season on how I felt the first day that I walked into this job, and I was terrified. Fear of failure. I think, it's natural in this industry, or in the sporting industry. You want to do well, particularly if you're, innately winners. But I think there's another pressure around it where you want to do well because you're a female. And also, I think, how many times have we seen, particularly in my discipline, you look at the pundits now, the female pundits, when they get something wrong, they get it wrong because they're a woman. They don't get it wrong because they've just made a mistake. You see things going around on social media where a female goalie's threw one in the back of the net, and then you'll see a video of a top male goalie do the same thing, but she's done it because she's a woman. And you have all that noise in your head. And I think, without, realistically, it is gonna make noise, and it's gonna play on your mind. And I think, like Chelsea said, you've got to find a way of trying to block that out. And for me, I've got a mentor now, and I've shared a lot of the same things. I'm terrified of failing and have all these imposter syndrome issues. And I also feel the weight of doing well for all the other female coaches, because actually, if you can do well, you can show the industry that, we deserve to be here, and we deserve to hold these positions, and we're good enough to be in these positions. So there's a lot of pressure, and I think wouldn't be fair if we sat here and said, no, we don't feel it, because we do. You know, the same way as athletes feel pressure, we feel pressure. And particularly when all eyes are on you and you're the one leading the pack, you know, you've got to get things right. And one of the things that I have in place, and I shared this with Chelsea when we spent the day together, is I have processes, and processes help me to realign myself when those negative thoughts creep in. So I think it's just finding ways to manage that, but also just remembering that you're in these positions because you deserve to be in them. And it's also important to have your support network around you, and also have women that uplift you as well.
Yeah, I want to talk about that actually. You know, we've spoken kind of on the negative side of all the bad noise, only a little bit, we haven't been too negative.
No.
We've spoken about the bad noise that comes from it, and you know, it's not just men that are negative about women, it can be women as well within it. But something that's really nice to see is that you both are really supportive of each other. We can see it here, we can see it across social media, always supporting each other's teams and each other's successes. How important is that allyship within the game? You know, you're not in the same sport, but you're within the same bracket of Nottingham Forest, and you really look out for each other. Have you seen massive benefits from that, having someone to lean on and having support from each other?
For me, definitely. I think coming here to Forest, and as well you being a coach or a manager, that I'd love to aspire to be as successful as you, even though you're in a different game. I think for me it's really important because I am so fresh and new, and I've been able to bounce off questions and follow you and shadow you, and I was just like, wow, okay. So sort of inspiring. Well, not sort of, you were inspiring. I was like, wow, I want to be Carly. It's so cool. But I think for me it's important because I am going through such a transition, and to have someone that went from player to coach is really important to me, and also the sport you've shown me. So I feel like I'm talking to you. Telling you how I feel. But it's been really like a breath of fresh air, and you've been really candid and honest with me and open about your journey and your processes, and it's helped me immensely. And I think if Carly was a different woman or man in your position, I wouldn't be able to have that, and I'd feel probably a little bit more lost in this role because I've been able to tap into you. So I think it's been really, really great for me, and also that you've shown interest in netball. And you've watched netball now. So it's all, I feel like I'm blabbering. I'm getting nervous. But yeah, so did I answer the question?
Yeah, you did. Very well, actually. Carly, for you, is this kind of allyship and support between women something that's been quite rare throughout your career, or have you always found that there's always people that are on your side?
No, I think I've been really fortunate. I've spoke a lot around my coaching journey and getting my badges and all these sorts of things. There's a lot of negative press around people getting on their A licence, women in coaching, all these sorts of things. I actually had a lot of really positive experiences. I've worked with some really wonderful coaches and players, male and female, that have followed my journey and have always picked up the phone and had a chat with me when good things have happened or difficult times have happened. And I think then that shapes you as well. And I think one of the things that I'd hope I would always be supportive of other people. There's been a lot of managers that have lost their job across this season as well, from the WSL down, and I've reached out to them, they've reached out to me. Obviously we've had a successful year, but I've had some friends that have lost their jobs. My partner actually worked in the industry and lost her job this summer. So it's so important that people that are in this industry and that are in this high-pressured situation and are in these high-pressured jobs understand each other, because it's lonely. Like it is, it's a really lonely place to be sometimes. And to be able to have those people reach out to you and share those experiences, or just say, look, it's okay, I've been there and I know how you're feeling, and it will get better, and times will, they'll get better as it goes on. It's important. It's really important, and I think the more that people can feel that it's okay to do that, the better, because I feel like, we are in an industry which is results based, and everybody's competing against everybody else. So sometimes there can be this, we can't share that, or we can't speak about it.
Gatekeeping.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I think that's where the women's game had an opportunity to be different. And certainly in my experiences with some of the women that are working in the top level of the game that I speak to regularly, it is different. And I think that's an opportunity that we have to continue that positivity and ensure that we do uplift each other and we do support each other. We can be competitors, but we can still be positive support networks for one another.
I'm going to round up with a little activity, and it's going to be topical because I think you guys have already spoken throughout the whole interview of what you want to see change within your respective sports. It's not crazy, don't worry.
True, false.
Just because Carly mentioned earlier, 7-year-old Carly, we're gonna do a little letter to our younger selves. So if you guys throw it back to when you guys were 7 years old, and if you had to give them a word of advice, or if you wanted to let them know anything about what's going to happen in the trajectory of their lives, so what would it be? Chelsea, I'll start with you.
Oh gosh, can I have some time? Don't play the trombone, you won't like it. Why did you choose that instrument?
I played the cello. We were both in the same boat about that. I would
That's my advice, don't waste your afternoons with the trombone.
You can leave it there if you want. It's pretty sad.
Yeah. I think my bit of advice to myself, be unapologetically you. I know I squashed myself a little bit and put myself into boxes to fit in throughout my time at school and throughout my time in certain teams. But be you, be loud, be proud about like the energy you bring and like the little weird quirks you have. And if people don't like you for it, they're not worth your time. So that would be probably my biggest thing, is because I didn't find high school or like more my teams an easy place to be because of my unique personality, let's call it that. Maybe my bossiness. But yeah, so I think that's probably the biggest thing. If I was like, you're going to make mistakes, enjoy them. That's where you learn the most, is when things don't go right. Yeah, just be you. Don't silence, don't squash yourself into a box to fit in.
Nice. Carly, 7-year-old you, what would you say?
Listen in maths. I can't add up, it's terrible. You ask my players when we're doing games where there's points, I'm not allowed to add up because it causes chaos. But yeah, no, all jokes aside, I followed you up with the trombone, and I played the piano a little bit, not very well, but I thought, yeah, maths is definitely one. No, I think for me it would be not to settle. I think I stayed in jobs and I didn't progress my career quick enough because, again, in the industry, it's you were made to feel you're lucky that you're in this position, which comes back to our conversation earlier. So I think if I could give myself any advice, I think I'd have been further down the line in my career if I hadn't had that background noise. So it would be, don't settle and always push the boundaries when someone tells you no.
Nice. Well, how lucky are we that you guys both didn't decide to go into music? Because then we wouldn't get to see both of you take the sporting world by storm.
It's because I had long arms. They were like, here's the trombone. I was like, okay.
Oh, guys, this has been such a brilliant conversation. Thank you. So insightful, very fun. Carly, Chelsea, thank you so much for joining us on Beyond the Game.
Thank you.
Thank you.